There is a pattern that runs through the entire recorded history of human power, and it has never changed. Not once, not in any civilization, on any continent, across any century of documented history. Every empire, dynasty, and institution achieving lasting control over large populations has done it the same way, not through armies alone, or through laws or religion, or the threat of punishment. Those things matter, but they are not the foundation. The foundation is always the same: control of the essentials of daily life, the things people cannot survive without. Because if you control those things, you do not need to control the people directly. People are not stupid. They understand their own dependency. And dependency, more than any law or army, shapes behavior at scale. This is not a theory. It is a historical observation you can make from the evidence of every major power structure ever built. Rome and the grain. At the height of its power, the Roman Empire administered a program called the Annona. This was state-controlled grain distribution, a vital system for the empire. Between 150,000 and 320,000 citizens of Rome received free or heavily subsidized grain. This was not charity. It was infrastructure, a deliberate creation of a dependent population. Their survival relied on the continued functioning of Roman supply chains. Emperors who threatened the grain supply faced immediate political crisis. Those who expanded it bought loyalty on a scale no army could purchase. The grain did not just feed Rome, it governed Rome. And the grain did not come from Rome. It came from Egypt, North Africa, and Sicily. These were agricultural provinces the empire fought for and administered, specifically because of their productive capacity, their ability to yield abundant harvests. Roman military expansion was not only about territory or glory. It was about the grain that territory could produce and the supply lines that could move it. Whoever controlled the grain controlled the empire. The emperor controlled the grain. That is not a coincidence. It is the design. The British East India Company received its royal charter in 1600 with a simple mandate: trade. It was not a government. It was not an army. It was a corporation granted the right to conduct commerce in Asia on behalf of the British Crown. What it became over the next 150 years is one of the most instructive examples of consolidated power in history. The company did not begin by conquering India. It began by embedding itself into the movement of goods: spices, textiles, opium, tea. It established trading posts, negotiated access, and built the logistical infrastructure for moving product across the subcontinent and back to Britain, quietly, commercially. For decades, it looked like nothing more than a very successful import business. By the time it was done, the East India Company had its own army, larger than the British military itself. It administered territory covering hundreds of millions of people. It collected taxes. It set agricultural policy. It decided what crops Indian farmers were permitted to grow and what they were required to grow instead. It did not start with soldiers. It started with supply chains. By the time the soldiers arrived in force, the economic infrastructure was already so deeply embedded that conquest was almost a formality. The company already controlled what moved, what it cost, and who profited. The people who depended on that network had no alternative. The network was the leverage. The soldiers just made it permanent. Standard Oil and the pipes. John D. Rockefeller did not build Standard Oil into the most dominant economic force in American history by producing more oil than his competitors. He built it by owning what the oil had to move through. Rockefeller understood something most people in the oil business did not. The product was not where the leverage was. Crude oil could be found in dozens of places. Refineries could be built. Wells could be drilled. The product itself was replicable. The pipelines were not replicable. The rail contracts were not replicable. The distribution infrastructure that moved refined petroleum from the well to the consumer That was the choke point. That was where you could make every competitor in the market dependent on your goodwill, your pricing, and your terms. Standard Oil at its peak controlled somewhere between 90 and 91% of all refined oil in the United States. Not because Rockefeller found more oil, because he owned more pipe. No competitor could operate at scale without eventually moving product through infrastructure Rockefeller controlled. When asked why he kept expanding even after Standard Oil was already dominant, his answer was direct. I want to own every pipe the oil moves through. Own what everything else has to pass through, and you own the terms on which everyone else operates. What is being built right now? You have been watching two news stories this week that most people are treating as separate. The first is about Bill Gates, a software billionaire who built his fortune in the intangible world of code and is now the largest private farmland owner in the United States, with 275,000 acres across 17 states purchased quietly through shell companies. When asked to explain it, he offered one paragraph and the assurance that there is no grand scheme involved. The second is about Kevin O'Leary and the Stratos project, a $100 billion AI data center campus covering 40,000 acres of rural Utah. Approved by county commissioners who left the public meeting room and voted in a closed session while hundreds of protesters watched on a live stream. A facility that will serve government defense clients whose identities have not been named. A facility that will consume more electricity than the entire state of Utah in a year. These are not two separate stories. One is about the land that food grows from. The other is about the infrastructure that information moves through. Food and information. The two inputs to human life that every power structure in recorded history has sought to control first. Because everything else, compliance, dependency, behavior at scale, follows from controlling those two things. You do not need laws if people cannot eat without your permission. You do not need enforcers if people cannot communicate, work, or access the systems of modern life without passing through your infrastructure. The Roman emperors understood this. The East India Company understood this. Rockefeller understood this so clearly, he said it out loud. The question worth asking is a simple one. Do the people making these acquisitions understand it too? Bill Gates has a professional investment team making decisions about 275,000 acres of American cropland. And the only explanation he has offered is that there is no grand scheme involved. The commissioners of Box Elder County left a room full of their constituents and approved a facility the size of the nation's capital, built on land that will serve undisclosed government clients. The USDA reports that 1/3 of American farmland is now owned by people who do not farm it. The 4 largest technology companies on Earth are spending $725 billion this year alone to own more pipe. None of this is secret. None of it is buried. It is all in the public record, in earnings calls and land registry filings and Reddit AMAs and county commission minutes. The pattern is not hidden. It is just not being named. Whoever controls the food and whoever controls the data controls the population. This has always been how empires work. The only thing that has changed is the scale. This is Illuminated Infamy. The history they're making right now is the same history they've always made.